Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a classic piece of literature. I'm excited to explore Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice with you. This is the first slide, which is our cover slide. Here, you can see the publication date, 1813, and the genre, romantic novel. We'll also look at its setting, Regency-era England. Throughout this presentation, we'll discuss the themes, imagery, literary devices, and character studies that make this novel so enduring. Plus, we'll review an act-by-act summary and analysis. So, let's get started and uncover the timeless charm of Pride and Prejudice together. Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice in 1796-97, originally under the title First Impressions, and it was published in 1813. The story is set in Regency-era England and follows the Bennet family as they move through the English countryside. The setting includes Hertfordshire, with Longbourn and Netherfield, and Derbyshire at Pemberley, all during the late 1700s to early 1800s. These domestic spaces, such as drawing rooms and country estates, really reflect the social stratification of the time. The central premise revolves around Mrs. Bennet's desperation to marry off her 5 daughters before their estate is entailed away. Elizabeth Bennet, the second daughter, is spirited and keen, and she has to navigate love, class prejudices, and her own sense of family duty. The novel's structure is traditionally divided into 3 volumes, often seen as 3 acts, and it's narrated in close third person with sharp, free, indirect discourse, meaning we experience Elizabeth's perceptions almost as if they are her own thoughts. This style allows us to really get inside her mind, making her experiences and perceptions feel immediate and personal. Overall, this background helps us understand the novel's rich social context and its focus on individual characters within a tightly stratified society. Let's take a closer look at some of the key characters in Pride and Prejudice. Starting with others, we have Mr. Darcy, who is initially proud and wealthy but eventually reveals a more sincere side. Then there's Mr. Bingley, known for being affable and a good-natured neighbor, which makes him quite likable. Mr. Wickham is charming on the surface but turns out to be quite deceitful, adding tension to the story. Lady Catherine de Bourgh is the embodiment of arrogance among the aristocrats, and Mr. Collins comes across as pompous and overly obsequious as a clergyman. Charlotte Lucas is pragmatic, often providing a grounded perspective for Elizabeth. Turning to the Bennet family, Elizabeth Bennet is our witty and independent heroine, sharp and confident in her own views. Jane Bennet, her elder sister, is gentle and charitable, often serving as a calming presence. Mr. Bennet, their father, is known for his irony and detachment, sometimes making him seem distant. Mrs. Bennet is anxious and obsessed with the idea of marriage, which fuels much of the family's dynamics. Lydia and Kitty are the younger, more frivolous sisters, adding lively energy and a touch of chaos. Lastly, Mary, the middle daughter, is quite pedantic, often providing comic relief with her seriousness. Supporting characters round out the story, giving it depth and contrast. Understanding these personalities helps us see how Austen explores themes of pride, prejudice, social class, and personal growth throughout the novel. These characters are essential in shaping the narrative and highlighting the various societal expectations of the time. Now, in chapters 1 through 23, we see the early events that set the stage for everything to come. The Netherfield ball, Mr. Collins's proposal, and the initial sparks of prejudice all play crucial roles. When Elizabeth and Darcy first meet, there's an immediate misjudgment on both sides. They each form opinions that are not quite accurate, which becomes a recurring theme. Wickham then enters the scene, sowing doubt and further complicating perceptions. Meanwhile, Jane and Bingley start to grow close, but circumstances and misunderstandings push them apart. These early interactions highlight how first impressions and social entanglements can influence characters, relationships, and perceptions, ultimately shaping the unfolding story. This sets the foundation for understanding the evolving themes of pride, prejudice, and societal expectations that run throughout the novel. In the first 12 chapters of Pride and Prejudice, we see the story beginning to unfold with the opening of the novel. Netherfield Park is let to Mr. Bingley, a wealthy and friendly man who brings along his proud and somewhat aloof friend, Mr. Darcy. At the Meryton Assembly, we observe Bingley dancing happily with Jane Bennet, while Darcy, notably, snubs Elizabeth Bennet, calling her tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Elizabeth, however, laughs off this slight, showcasing her resilience and sharp wit, which are key traits throughout the story. Moving into chapters 7 through 12, the plot thickens with the arrival of the military regiment. Jane visits Netherfield and falls ill, prompting Elizabeth to walk 3 miles in the rain to care for her. This act of kindness results in her muddy petticoats, which scandalizes the Bingley sisters and sparks gossip. During this time, Elizabeth also meets Mr. Wickham, a charming militia officer. Wickham shares his grievances, claiming that Darcy cruelly denied him a promised living, a story Elizabeth is quick to believe, which fuels her initial prejudice against Darcy. So overall, these first chapters set the scene for the social dynamics and misunderstandings that will drive much of the novel's tension, highlighting themes of pride, prejudice, and the importance of first impressions. Now, let's delve into the events of chapters 13 through 23. First, we meet Mr. Collins, the pompous clergyman and heir to Longbourn. He arrives with the aim of marrying one of the Bennet girls, and his exaggerated deference to Lady Catherine de Bourgh adds a humorous touch to the story. His character highlights social pretensions and the absurdity of class distinctions. Next, we come to the Netherfield ball, which is a pivotal scene. During the ball, Elizabeth finds herself dancing with Darcy, a dance charged with both attraction and underlying tension. Interestingly, Wickham keeps his distance from Darcy, which hints at deeper issues. Meanwhile, Lydia and Kitty behave in ways that embarrass the family, and Mrs. Bennet, ever talkative, loudly discusses Jane's prospects, revealing her persistent hopes for Jane's marriage. Moving forward, Collins makes a proposal to Elizabeth, which she firmly refuses, standing her ground despite her mother's wishes. In a quick turn, Collins shifts his attention to Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's practical friend, who accepts his proposal. Meanwhile, Bingley's sudden departure from Netherfield leaves Jane heartbroken, and Elizabeth begins to suspect that Darcy and the Bingley sisters might have played a part in this. These chapters really deepen the themes of social expectations, misunderstandings, and the characters' personal growth, which are central to the overall story. Let's start by looking at how social and economic pressures shape the characters in Pride and Prejudice. Mrs. Bennet's obsession with matchmaking isn't just for comic effect. It reflects the serious reality that entail laws meant that the family would lose Longbourn when Mr. Bennet died. For women like Elizabeth, marriage was often their only path to economic security. Now, Charlotte Lucas provides an interesting contrast. Her decision to accept Collins isn't vilified or portrayed as a moral failing. Austen presents it as a rational choice, given the limited options women had. It highlights how pragmatism often overshadowed romantic ideals in that society, especially for women facing uncertain futures. Moving on to Pride and First Impressions, Darcy's initial disdain for others shows aristocratic pride at work. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's quick judgment of Darcy reveals her own prejudices. Both characters are, in a sense, guilty of these flaws from the start, which is why the title emphasizes their twin failings, pride and prejudice. Let's also consider Austen's use of irony and free indirect discourse. The opening line, "It is a truth universally acknowledged," is one of the most famous examples of irony in literature. It sets the tone for the novel's wit and social critique. Throughout, we see events filtered through Elizabeth's sharp, sometimes mistaken, perspective, adding layers of humor and insight. Finally, Austen's social commentary runs deep. She uses her themes and narrative techniques to critique societal expectations, class distinctions, and gender roles, all while engaging us with lively storytelling. This slide highlights how these elements come together, making Pride and Prejudice not just a love story, but a sharp social critique as well. Now, in chapters 24 through 42, we see a pivotal moment in Elizabeth's story, Darcy's first proposal, which of course is refused. But what's truly remarkable is what follows, the letter Darcy writes to Elizabeth that begins to dismantle her prejudices. This letter is a turning point. It peels back the layers of misunderstanding and reveals truths about Darcy's character and actions. It's really the moment where Elizabeth begins to see Darcy in a new light, to truly see him for who he is beyond first impressions. This section is about revelations, rejection, and reevaluation, ACTII of our story. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes our perceptions need to be challenged for us to grow. Darcy's proposal upends Elizabeth's world, but his subsequent letter allows her to reevaluate her judgments. It's a fascinating example of how honesty and humility can change perceptions and deepen understanding, which ties directly into the overall theme of the story. The importance of seeing beyond superficial judgments and embracing true character. Let's talk about chapters 24 through 34. During this section, Elizabeth visits Charlotte and Mr. Collins at Hunsford Parsonage, which is near Rosings. This gives her the chance to see Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who is quite a commanding and imposing figure. Elizabeth also encounters Darcy again, who is visiting his aunt, and their interactions become more charged. They resume their verbal sparring, but now there's a noticeable undercurrent of tension on Darcy's part, hinting at deeper feelings and conflicts. Moving on to Darcy's first proposal in chapter 34, this is a pivotal scene. Darcy declares his love for Elizabeth, but he also confesses how much he struggled with his feelings because of her social standing and her family connections, which he initially saw as inferior. Elizabeth, of course, rejects him passionately. She accuses him of arrogance, of interfering with Jane's happiness, and even of cheating Wickham out of his inheritance. This scene really highlights the core themes of pride and prejudice, showing how social class and personal biases influence their perceptions and actions. It also marks a turning point in their relationship, setting the stage for future developments. On this slide, we see that chapters 35 and 36 represent a crucial turning point in the story. After his rejected proposal, Darcy hands Elizabeth a letter that addresses the accusations she had made earlier. This letter is really revealing because it provides Darcy's perspective and clarifies many misunderstandings. First, he admits to having separated Bingley from Jane. He justifies his actions by pointing out Jane's apparent indifference and the improper behavior of the Bennet family. However, he also admits that he didn't consider Jane's feelings enough, which adds depth to his character. Then Darcy turns to Wickham. He exposes Wickham's true nature, how he squandered his inheritance and then tried to elope with Darcy's young sister Georgiana for her fortune. This revelation causes Elizabeth's admiration for Wickham to collapse, shifting her perceptions dramatically. This letter prompts a major epiphany for Elizabeth. She realizes that her previous judgments were clouded by vanity and resentment. She recognizes that her feelings had colored her perception of others, and this is where her genuine character growth begins. Overall, this letter is the emotional pivot of the novel. It marks a moment where Elizabeth begins to see herself and others more clearly, setting her on the path toward true understanding and humility. This chapter underscores the importance of looking beyond first impressions and valuing truth over prejudice. Now, let's turn to chapters 37 through 42, which bring some important developments. Elizabeth returns home from her visit, and she's deeply reflective about everything she's experienced. She chooses to keep Darcy's letter a secret from Jane, mainly to protect her sister from unnecessary pain, since the truth could be quite upsetting. At the same time, Elizabeth privately reassesses Wickham. She can't reveal what she knows about him without exposing Georgiana's near elopement, which adds a layer of complexity to her feelings. Moving on to Lydia, she receives an invitation to Brighton to join Colonel Forster's regiment, where Wickham is stationed. Elizabeth pleads with her father to refuse this invitation, warning him that Lydia's recklessness could lead to trouble. However, Mr. Bennet dismisses her concerns, which foreshadows a looming catastrophe that we'll see unfold soon. Also, Jane takes a trip to London to visit her aunt, Mrs. Gardiner. She hopes to see Bingley there, but unfortunately, the Bingley sisters are cold and avoid her. Jane accepts that Bingley is truly gone, which is a tough but necessary realization for her. Overall, these chapters highlight the ongoing tensions and foreshadow future conflicts, emphasizing how misunderstandings and choices continue to shape the characters' fates. Let's explore how Austen structures Pride and Prejudice through Act II, which mirrors Act I in a fascinating way. In the first act, Elizabeth judges Mr. Darcy too quickly based on his charm, but in Act II, she judges him again, this time too hastily based on resentment. This symmetry creates a kind of correction arc, allowing both characters to grow and reevaluate their perceptions. Now, moving to the epistolary tradition, Austen originally designed the novel to be told through letters. You can see this in how Darcy's letter survives throughout the story, along with key letters from Jane and Lydia. These letters are powerful because they reveal truths that conversation often can't, adding depth and immediacy to the narrative. One of the most iconic moments is the proposal scene. Here, Darcy's proposal is a masterclass in dramatic irony. He expects Elizabeth to accept, yet she refuses. His honest but tactless expression of class prejudice actually highlights his flaws, which Elizabeth also shares in her own way. Both characters, in their own moments, hurt and are wounded, making their interactions complex and real. The letter itself becomes a crucial narrative device. As Elizabeth reads Darcy's letter, we see her moral center shift, her understanding deepens in real time. Austen skillfully renders her thought process, making us feel her internal change unfold right before us. It's arguably the most significant document in the novel, as it marks a turning point in Elizabeth's perception. Overall, this act's structure and form, combined with Austen's craft, create a compelling and layered narrative. It's a perfect example of how technique and storytelling work together to develop characters and themes, reinforcing the idea that true understanding often requires correction and reflection. Now, let's move on to chapters 43 through 61, where we see some of the most pivotal moments in the story. This section covers Pemberley, Lydia's elopement, Lady Catherine's interference, and the two proposals that ultimately shape the characters' futures. By this point, character transformation is really complete. Darcy, who once seemed proud and reserved, now proves his true worth through his actions and genuine kindness. Similarly, Elizabeth fully embraces both love and self-knowledge, understanding herself and her feelings more clearly than ever before. This part of the story is really about crisis, resolution, and union. It's where conflicts reach their peak, but also where they start to resolve. The tension surrounding Lydia's elopement threatens to ruin everyone's plans, especially as Lady Catherine interferes, trying to influence Elizabeth's decisions. But despite these challenges, love and understanding prevail. The two proposals, initially hesitant and full of misunderstanding, finally lead to union. This section underscores the overall theme that true character and love can overcome social obstacles and personal flaws. Ultimately, we see how these trials pave the way for genuine happiness and maturity. It's a powerful reminder that growth often comes through facing difficulties and making the right choices. In chapters 43 to 46, we see several pivotal moments that deepen the story and reveal more about the characters. Elizabeth visits Pemberley with the Gardiners, believing that Darcy is away. During the tour, she is pleasantly surprised by the housekeeper's glowing description of Darcy's generosity and kindness, which begins to challenge her earlier perceptions. Unexpectedly, Darcy himself returns and greets Elizabeth warmly, without any resentment. This moment is significant because it shows her that Pemberley, the estate, symbolizes the real Darcy, cultivated, responsible, and genuinely good-hearted. Later, Darcy introduces Elizabeth to his shy sister, Georgiana. This encounter disproves Wickham's false claims that Georgiana was prideful. Instead, Elizabeth sees Darcy's tender, brotherly care for his sister, which further shifts her opinion of him in a positive direction. However, the mood shifts dramatically with Lydia's elopement. Jane's letter reveals that Lydia has run away with Wickham to Scotland, which threatens the entire Bennet family's reputation. Elizabeth immediately worries that their chances of marriage are gone and that their family's honor is at stake. She quickly informs Darcy of the situation, and he departs, seemingly for good. These chapters highlight the contrast between appearances and reality, and how perceptions can change quickly based on new insights. They also underscore the themes of responsibility, integrity, and the importance of understanding true character beyond superficial judgments. Now, let's delve into the key events from chapters 47 through 53, where we see the resolution of the crisis that has built up throughout the story. First, the Bennet family is thrown into great distress because Lydia has run off with Wickham. In response, Mr. Bennet and Mr. Gardiner set out for London to find her. What's truly remarkable here is that, unbeknownst to everyone, Darcy has secretly located Wickham, paid off his debts, and bribed him into marrying Lydia. This act of anonymous generosity is a pivotal moment, showing Darcy's true character beyond his initial pride. Later, Mrs. Gardiner reveals this secret to Elizabeth, which adds a new layer of understanding and gratitude toward Darcy. Moving on, Lydia and Wickham return as a married couple, but their behavior is shameless and carefree. Interestingly, Lydia accidentally mentions that Darcy was at their wedding, which piques Elizabeth's curiosity even more. Elizabeth then writes to Mrs. Gardiner, eager to learn the full truth about Darcy's involvement, highlighting her growing awareness of Darcy's true nature. Finally, there's a joyful resolution for Bingley and Jane. Bingley returns to Netherfield with Darcy, and he proposes to Jane, who happily accepts. This minor romance resolves first, clearing the way for Elizabeth and Darcy's relationship to develop fully. As we see, these chapters beautifully tie together the overarching theme of understanding and personal growth, emphasizing that appearances can be deceiving and true character reveals itself over time. In chapters 54 to 61, we see some of the most pivotal moments in the story. First, Lady Catherine de Bourgh makes a dramatic appearance at Longbourn, demanding that Elizabeth promise never to marry Mr. Darcy. She claims Darcy is meant for her daughter, Anne. Elizabeth, however, refuses to be intimidated and stands her ground. This defiant refusal prompts Lady Catherine to report back to Darcy, and interestingly, Darcy interprets her reaction as encouragement rather than disapproval. Moving on to Darcy's second proposal, which takes place in chapter 58. As they walk together, Darcy openly tells Elizabeth that his feelings haven't changed, but he's also asking her if hers have. Elizabeth, in turn, gratefully accepts his renewed love and admits her own feelings have grown. In this moment, they both acknowledge their past faults, pride and prejudice, and realize they are truly meant for each other. It's a beautiful turning point that highlights growth and mutual understanding. Finally, in chapters 59 through 61, we see the resolution of the story. Mr. Bennet gives his warm consent, and Mrs. Bennet is ecstatic about the marriage. Elizabeth and Darcy settle comfortably at Pemberley, and Jane and Bingley find happiness nearby. Meanwhile, Lydia and Wickham continue their carefree, somewhat aimless lives, and Mr. Bennet often visits Pemberley. The novel ends on a note of quiet, well-earned happiness, showing that love, growth, and understanding can bring about a fulfilling ending. Now, let's look at Lady Catherine as a foil in Pride and Prejudice. She embodies pride, but notably, she lacks self-awareness. This makes her the negative image of what Darcy could have remained if he hadn't changed. What's interesting is that her bullying of Elizabeth actually ends up speeding up the romance between Elizabeth and Darcy, showing how her arrogance unwittingly plays a role in their union. Moving on to the theme of comedy and closure, the double wedding at the end provides a satisfying, comic resolution. It restores the social order and rewards merit. Austen also gives Lydia and Wickham a continued life, with their misbehavior still visible. This choice resists a purely moralistic ending, highlighting that life isn't always perfectly tidy. Now, Pemberley isn't just a fancy house, it's a symbol of Darcy's moral character. Its natural beauty, unaffected and not showy, mirrors his reformed personality. When Elizabeth first sees Pemberley, she perceives the house before truly understanding Darcy himself, which is a key moment in her evolving perception of him. Lastly, Darcy's secret act of rescuing Lydia is a powerful moment. He does it without expecting anything in return, which proves his genuine change. It stands in stark contrast to his earlier prideful stance. This action, rather than words, really redeems him and shows how true character is revealed through deeds. Let's explore some of the central themes in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Austen's narrative voice consistently undercuts social pretension, revealing the folly of snobbery and superficiality through sharp, comic observation. This wit and irony serve to challenge the rigid social norms of her time. Both Elizabeth and Darcy experience painful self-recognition as they grow, highlighting that true love requires honest self-examination. Recognizing one's own flaws is key to genuine connection. The theme of self-knowledge runs deep here. Without it, characters are trapped by social expectations. For instance, Darcy must descend from his high social standing, while Wickham exploits his ability to move between classes to his advantage. Class and status are also central. Austen presents the tension between economic necessity and romantic love. While love is ideal, financial stability often complicates or even overrides personal feelings. Marriage as a theme is complex. Both characters and readers see that snap judgments can obscure the truth. Elizabeth initially misjudges Darcy, and Darcy, in turn, misjudges Elizabeth's family. These misunderstandings highlight how prejudice influences perceptions. Prejudice itself is a key obstacle. Darcy's condescending attitude and Elizabeth's intellectual pride both serve as barriers that they must humbly confront and overcome. Finally, pride plays a crucial role. Both characters need to shed their pride, Darcy's social arrogance and Elizabeth's prejudice, to truly understand and love each other. These themes are intertwined, revealing how social class, pride, prejudice, and self-awareness shape the characters' journeys and the novel's enduring message about human nature. Let's explore how Austen uses imagery and symbolism to deepen the themes of pride and prejudice. First, consider how estates reflect characters. Pemberley stands for Darcy's true self, natural, grand, and honest. Longbourn, on the other hand, is modest and cluttered, mirroring the Bennet family's chaos. Rosings is ostentatious and cold, symbolizing Lady Catherine's arrogance. Netherfield is a rented, temporary residence, representing Bingley's indecisiveness and attachment. Next, let's look at walking and movement. Elizabeth's walks are highly symbolic of her independence. When she walks to Netherfield to tend Jane, despite muddy petticoats, she defies social propriety, showing her moral courage. Walking with Darcy at Rosings becomes a form of intellectual combat, revealing their evolving relationship. And walking at Pemberley signifies a spiritual awakening for Elizabeth, a moment of self-revelation. Physical mobility here reflects her moral and emotional agency. Now, onto letters, a vital element in the novel. They carry emotional weight and truth beyond social performance. Darcy's letter to Elizabeth is transformative, allowing her to see him and himself differently. Jane's letters reveal her suffering, and Lydia's reckless note exposes her impulsiveness. Letters serve as honest communication channels that bypass societal masks, revealing authentic feelings and truths. Finally, Austen employs the language of seeing and blinding to symbolize self-awareness. For example, Elizabeth opens her eyes to her prejudices, gaining clarity. Darcy had been blind to his own pride, and through this metaphor, Austen underscores the importance of self-knowledge. Visual metaphors reinforce the novel's core theme. True understanding comes from seeing oneself clearly. In essence, these images and symbols work together to explore identity, morality, and growth, making Pride and Prejudice a rich tapestry of meaning beneath the surface. Let's look at slide 20, which focuses on Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen and its use of foil characters. Foil characters are pairs that contrast each other to highlight specific traits. For example, Jane and Elizabeth serve as foils. Jane embodies uncritical goodness, while Elizabeth is more critical and witty. Lydia, impulsive and heedless, stands in contrast to Elizabeth's thoughtfulness. Bingley is agreeable and easygoing, whereas Darcy is reserved and proud. Collins is obsequious, always eager to please, while Darcy's pride keeps him somewhat aloof. These pairings help us see different traits in sharper relief through their contrasts, enriching the story's character development. Moving on to comic relief, Austen uses characters like Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Collins, and Lydia to provide humor and levity. Their silly follies lighten the emotional weight of the novel, but also carry moral lessons, showing what can happen when vanity and self-deception go unchecked. Their humorous antics remind us of the importance of self-awareness and humility. Next, Austen's satire is subtle yet sharp. She targets the marriage market, class snobbery, and female education, but does so with a light touch that keeps her critique engaging rather than preachy. This lightness makes her social commentary both powerful and enduring, encouraging us to think critically while still enjoying the story. The pervasive use of irony and sarcasm is another hallmark of Austen's style. From the famous opening line, "It is a truth universally acknowledged," to Mr. Bennet's dry wit, irony runs throughout the novel. Dramatic irony is also key. The reader often knows more than the characters, like Wickham's true nature, which creates a layer of suspense and humor. Austen's use of free indirect discourse is a brilliant technique that blends the narrator's voice with the character's thoughts. We get an intimate view of Elizabeth's mind without a first-person narrative, which creates a close connection while maintaining an ironic distance. This technique allows Austen to comment on her character's thoughts and actions subtly. Finally, dialogue plays a crucial role in character development. Austen's conversations are remarkably efficient. Just a few lines can reveal someone's social class, wit, or motivations. It's a powerful tool that makes her characters vivid and her social commentary sharp. All these elements, foil characters, comic relief, satire, irony, free indirect discourse, and sharp dialogue, work together to create a rich, layered novel that explores human nature and society with wit and insight. Let's take a closer look at Elizabeth's prejudice. From the very first ball, she resents Darcy because of a slight he made, which clouds her judgment. She also accepts Wickham's dishonest stories without questioning their truth, which further distorts her view of Darcy. Elizabeth refuses to see Darcy's true qualities, focusing instead on superficial impressions. She often mistakes wit for wisdom and charm for virtue, which leads her to overlook his genuine character. However, her growth comes through self-examination, honesty, rejecting vanity, and her willingness to change. Now, turning to Mr. Darcy's pride. He believes that his noble birth automatically makes him superior, which fuels his sense of snobbery. He's insulted when the Bennet family talks about their connections, perceiving them as socially inferior. His pride also causes him to separate Bingley from Jane, simply out of a sense of social superiority. His initial proposal to Elizabeth reveals a condescension that she finds offensive. Yet Darcy is eventually redeemed through humility, acts of anonymous generosity, and his capacity for genuine love that goes beyond social class. When we compare the two, Elizabeth's flaw is prejudice, her tendency to judge prematurely and superficially. Darcy's flaw is pride, his belief in his own superiority. Both traits are rooted in a kind of self-focus that blinds them to true worth in others. This contrast is central to the novel's theme, overcoming pride and prejudice to find genuine connection. Their journey shows that true humility and open-mindedness can lead to personal growth and happiness. In Austen's time, women had almost no legal or economic independence. They couldn't own property, vote, or pursue careers. Marriage was really their main, and often only, way to secure financial stability and social status. Now let's look at the 4 different models of marriage that Austen presents in the novel. First, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Their relationship is a cautionary example. Physical attraction without intellectual compatibility leads to mutual contempt and a lack of responsibility. It shows what happens when marriage is based solely on surface qualities. Next, we have Charlotte and Collins. Their marriage is more pragmatic. It's about security rather than love. Austen presents this without outright condemnation, highlighting a different approach to marriage driven by necessity. Then there's Lydia and Wickham. Their relationship is driven by lust and recklessness. It has no material foundation or respect, and Austen predicts that their marriage will quickly sour, showing the dangers of impulsive unions. Finally, Austen's ideal is represented by Elizabeth and Darcy, as well as Jane and Bingley. These couples are founded on mutual respect, shared character, and intellectual engagement. But Austen also acknowledges the importance of economic realities. For instance, Darcy's wealth and social standing are crucial factors. Overall, Austen explores the complex social reality of marriage for women in Regency England, showing both the constraints they faced and the ideals they aspired to. Let's take a closer look at the character development of Elizabeth and Darcy throughout the story. Initially, in Act I, Elizabeth dismisses Darcy and is influenced by Wickham's tales, which feeds her prejudice. She also plays a role in separating Bingley from Jane, showing her initial misunderstandings. Moving into Act II, Part 1, we see Elizabeth continuing to judge Darcy harshly and dismissing him outright. At the same time, Darcy's pride is evident, but he begins to be charmed by Elizabeth's wit and spirit. In Act II, Part 2, Darcy starts to reflect more honestly, writing a sincere letter that reveals his true character and makes Elizabeth realize her own prejudices, which she accepts with some shame. Then, in Act III, Darcy continues to act with integrity, respecting Elizabeth's intelligence and feelings. He rescues Lydia anonymously and proposes to her with genuine emotion, showing his growth. Elizabeth, in turn, recognizes Darcy's true nature, accepts his love with joy and humility, and we see her character evolve into someone who is more understanding and open-minded. Overall, this slide highlights how both Elizabeth and Darcy grow through self-awareness, honesty, and overcoming their prejudices, which is central to the theme of the novel, personal growth, and the importance of looking beyond first impressions. Pride and Prejudice holds a special place as one of the most widely read novels in the English language. Austen really pioneered the novel of manners, bringing humor to everyday domestic life and delving into psychological realism, which are now central to the literary tradition. Her influence can be seen clearly in writers like George Eliot, Henry James, E.M. Forster, and even in modern women's fiction. Moving on to feminist readings, critics often celebrate Elizabeth as a proto-feminist figure, someone who refuses to subordinate her judgment to any man, including the wealthy Darcy. At the same time, some critics note that the novel's conservatism is evident because Elizabeth's reward is still marriage to a great estate, which reflects the social norms of Austen's time. When we look at adaptations and pop culture, the 1995 BBC series and the 2005 film are among the most beloved versions. Additionally, Bridget Jones's Diary, which came out in 1996 and 2001, is a modern retelling that many find relatable. The novel's story continues to inspire rom-coms, retellings, and fan fiction around the world, showing its enduring emotional truth and relevance. Finally, the timeless questions Austen raises remain very much alive today. Can love truly overcome social barriers? Do people genuinely change? And how much do we need to compromise between practicality and happiness? These questions keep the novel fresh and meaningful, connecting it to our ongoing conversations about human relationships and societal expectations. And finally, as we come to the end of our journey through Pride and Prejudice, I want to highlight a key point. The famous phrase, "It is a truth universally acknowledged," sets the stage, but what Austen reveals is much more complex. Her story endures because it's fundamentally human. It's about two people who need to confront their own flaws before they can truly love each other. Austen doesn't give us a fairy tale with perfect characters and easy resolutions. Instead, she offers something more valuable, a realistic portrait of two intelligent, flawed individuals who grow into better versions of themselves through honesty, humility, and courage. Ultimately, the novel isn't just about marriage. It's about the challenging but rewarding process of truly knowing ourselves, and just as importantly, recognizing and correcting our faults. That's the real lesson here, and it ties beautifully into the overall theme of personal growth and understanding that we've explored throughout this presentation.